Chapter 25. The hand spun me around and I stared up into the angry face of Mrs. Marshall. "What are you doing in here?" she repeated. Mrs. Marshall is the nice cook. She's our favorite. She always kids around with everyone at lunchtime when she dishes out the food. But she wasn't kidding around now. She knew I didn't belong in the kitchen. Her black curls pressed against her hairnet, she tilted her head, hands in her white apron pocket, waiting for me to answer her question. I glanced at the door and saw the 4 creeps peeking in. "Mrs. Marshall," I whispered, "don't serve the macaroni." She squinted at me. "Huh? Speak up, young man." "Don't serve the macaroni," I whispered a little louder. I couldn't say it much louder. Wart and his 3 friends would hear me. "Please, don't let anyone eat the macaroni," I begged. "What are you saying?" she demanded loudly. "Why are you whispering?" "Don't serve the macaroni," I repeated, still in a whisper. "It's poisoned." She uttered an angry moan. "Young man, our macaroni is delicious," she declared. "I am so sick and tired of jokes about our food." "She's right," another cook, Mrs. Davis, chimed in from across the room. She waved a long mixing spoon at me. "We make good, wholesome food here. It's like home-cooked, and we're tired of all the horrible jokes." "We have feelings, you know," Mrs. Marshall added. "We use real cheese in the macaroni," Mrs. Davis called, still waving her spoon. "None of that artificial stuff, and real macaroni noodles." "That's right," the 3rd cook called. She was new. I didn't know her name. "Give him a taste, Alice. Give him a taste of the macaroni. He'll see how good it is." Mrs. Marshall leaned over me. "Good idea. Would you like a little bowl of macaroni?" She stepped over to the food counter. "Try it. You won't make any more jokes," Mrs. Davis said. Mrs. Marshall started to spoon out a little bowl of macaroni for me. I backed up towards the door. "Oh, no, please. No, thank you," I sputtered. I reached the doorway. I had a big breakfast," I told them. I turned and ran out and bumped into the 4 creeps. They all cheered. "Commander, you have done it!" Wart cried happily. "You have planted the seeds." They cheered again, and clapped and slapped me on the back. All 4 of them are grinning their heads off. "Now we just have to wait till this afternoon," Brenda declared. "The school will be crawling with creeps." Chapter 26. I didn't go near the lunchroom at lunchtime. I hid in the stairwell instead. My stomach was growling, but I didn't care. I couldn't bear to see all the kids gobbling down macaroni, swallowing the little seeds that could turn them into squirrel-eating creeps. At school, a school full of purple lizard monsters, I thought miserably. And all my fault. My fault. All afternoon I didn't hear a word from my teacher. I didn't hear the word my teacher said. Iris tried to talk to me, but I pretended to be listening really hard to the teacher. I sat at my desk, studying the other kids and watching for signs that they were changing, waiting for the seeds I had planted to do their evil. But I didn't see anything odd. No bumpy purple skin, no long flickering tongues. The kids all appeared normal. After school, the 4 creeps were waiting for me in the playground. They surrounded me and led me to our hiding place in the woods across the street. Wart angrily kicked a stone out of his way. David and Jared were muttering unhappily and shaking their heads. "It didn't work," Brenda said softly. "The seeds didn't work. No one changed." "What went wrong?" Wart said. "What could have gone wrong?" They all stared at me. Suddenly I knew the answer. I knew exactly why none of the kids had turned into creeps. "No one ate the macaroni?" I blurted out. I could have kicked myself. Why did I tell them? Why did I tip them off? They narrowed their eyes at me. "Huh?" "No one ever eats the macaroni," I said. I already started. I had to explain. "It's sort of a school rule. The macaroni hasn't been touched by anyone in years and years." All 4 of them groaned. Wart stepped in and stared up at me and stared at me suspiciously. "How do you know that, Commander?" he demanded. "You arrived here only a few days before we did. So how did you know that the macaroni hasn't been eaten in years?" I had to think fast. If they discovered that I wasn't a creep, they'd probably disintegrate me, or eat me, or something. "One of the kids in my class told me," I replied. I lowered my head. "I should have remembered sooner. I have failed you. Our mission is a failure." "No, it isn't," Brenda chimed in. "I have more seeds, and a new plan. A better plan." The other creeps turned to her. Tell us your plan, Jared demanded. We don't have much time before the seeds lose their power. It's simple, Brenda replied with a shrug. We bake the seeds into cookies. Then we hand out the cookies for free at the school bake sale on Saturday. Excellent idea, David cried. Yay, Wart and Jared cheered. Everyone gets a free cookie, Brenda said, grinning an evil grin. And everyone becomes a creep. Brenda's grin made me feel cold all over. I swallowed hard. My mouth suddenly felt so dry. I knew that her plan would work, and I knew that no one in my school could pass up a free cookie. What could I do? I asked myself. How can I stop them? They all turned to me in a "Shall we bake the cookies, Commander?" Wart demanded. Shall we put Brenda's plan into action? I stared back at them. They were eagerly waiting for my answer. I wondered if they could see my knees shaking. Well, I took a deep breath. I had to try something. I had to think of something to stop them. I don't like Brenda's plan, I said, trying to keep my voice low and steady. I think we must prepare the seeds for a later time. I think we should bury the seeds in the ground and see if they sprout. That way we will have lots and lots of seeds. I know, it was a really lame idea, but it was the only thing popping into my mind. Would they buy it, I wondered? Would they forget about Brenda's plan and go along with it? Would they agree to bury the seeds? No way. It took me only a few seconds to realize I had made the worst mistake of my life. Chapter 27. Bury the seeds? Brenda cried. Bury them? The four of them moved in closer and they formed a tight circle around me. I glanced nervously around, searching the woods for the best path to escape, but they had me trapped. Are you sure you are our commander? Wart demanded. David and Jared sneered at me. A creep commander would never tell us to bury the identity seeds, Jared said menacingly. Wart stuck his face up close to mine. Prove you are our commander, he ordered. Yes, prove you are a creep, David cried. Prove it, prove it. All four of them began to chant. I gasped and tried to back away, but they had me surrounded. Prove it, prove it. And as they chanted, they began to change once again. Their skin grew bumpy and bright purple, their hair slid into their heads, and their jaws stretched in long, toothy snouts. Prove it, they chanted. Prove that you're a creep. I stared at them, unable to move and unable to run. What could I do? Prove you're a creep, they demanded. Prove it now. Eyes flashing wildly, purple bumps quivering all over their bodies, they slithered towards me, and I knew that I was doomed.